What's going on, guys? Today we're going to make a desktop monitor tool. So what this is going to do is take screenshots and log keystrokes of any desktop. Now, before we get started with this, it does have similar functionality to what's known as a remote access tool or RAT. So because of that, I just want to have a disclaimer that if you guys use this for anything, make sure you use it for good and not bad. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and run this for you guys here, and we can see what happens. So it's going to go ahead and take screenshots on a loop here while also logging my keystrokes. So I can go ahead and type, hello, my name is John, and we can go ahead and look here, oops, in our logs. And we see in our logs now we have HELLO with the spaces. My name is John all the way down. These numbers that you see on the right here are just timestamps when the keystrokes occurred. So if we go ahead now and we look again at the logs, we can go ahead and see our screenshots. And these here are all PNG files that are all being taken as screenshots on an interval that we set when we run the program. So again, doesn't really look like, let me go in there so we can see that. Alright, so this is what it looks like. Again, here is my screenshot at the timestamp, and there I am, looking good. Alright, so let's go ahead here and get started making this. So this project was actually made with Python 3, so if you guys are familiar with Python 3, that would be fantastic. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the pip Python package manager. So let's go ahead here and move and open up our terminal. What we can do first is, well, I'll start fresh so you guys, if someone's new and hasn't really done having much experience with this, they still know what to do. So what we're going to do here is go ahead and open up what's known as the terminal or the command prompt. Then we're going to go ahead and type cd to move into our home directory. Then we're going to go ahead and type mkdir, which is going to make a new directory, and that is going to be where we're going to keep our project. So we're going to call that monitor, or we'll call it desktop monitor. Alright, so once we've made that folder, we need to move into it. So we're going to go cd desktop monitor, and now we're going to go ahead and install a few Python packages. So if you guys haven't installed Python yet, now would be the time to do that. Python 3.7 is going to be the latest version. That's the one I recommend you use. So once you've installed Python, let's go ahead and install the packages we're going to need. Now before we do that, we're going to start off with a virtual environment. And what this is going to do is allow us to keep the specific versions of the Python packages that we need for our project separated from our global Python packages. So to do that, we're going to use a Python package known as virtual env. So let's just go ahead and install that now. I already have that installed on my computer, but you guys can go ahead and install that with pip install virtual env. And that'll go ahead and install that for you. So now we can go ahead here and say virtual env venv dash dash python equals python 3.7. Okay, so that's going to go ahead and create a folder in our current folder now called venv, where we're going to keep our specific Python packages that we need so we can make sure that this program can continue to run. So now what we're going to do is activate that virtual environment. And the way we're going to do that is with this command here. So we're going to say venv bin activate, and we also want to put source in front. So source venv bin activate. That'll go ahead and activate our virtual environment, so now any packages that we now install with pip are going to be stored in our specific environment here and not with the global Python. So let's go ahead now and install two packages that we're going to need, which are PyInput and MSS. Alright, so now we've got both those packages installed here. We can now import them into any programs that we're going to run with inside or once this virtual environment is active. So let's go ahead and do that now. We're going to go ahead and call this, we'll just call it monitor.py. And we're going to go ahead and import those packages. So let's say we're going to say import, or no, we're going to say from MSS, import MSS, because we need that out of that package that we downloaded there. And we're also going to say if from PyInput, we're going to need the two things. We're going to need the ability to monitor the keyboard. So let's go ahead here and we just need the listener. So now we can go ahead here. We've got our listener and MSS imported. We're going to be able to use these functions later to activate the program, to activate the key press listener. So what we need to do now is we're going to go ahead and create a class, and this class is going to encapsulate all of the data and all of the kind of functionality that our remote access tool or desktop monitor is going to have. So let's call this class just monitor. And so we'll say class monitor, and we're just going to go ahead and leave it like that for now. we'll put a pass here, and now we're going to go ahead and put some basic syntax for running our Python program. So we're going to say if underscore underscore name underscore underscore equals with two equal signs, and then two more underscores, main, two more underscores, colon. Then we want to go ahead and we want to run our program. So that's basically if this file is the file that you say that you put after Python when you're calling it in the command line, then it will make sure to only execute this. Whereas if we were importing this monitor file into another program, then we would not execute this code that's in this block. So this is specifically if this file is the file that is executed. Otherwise, this file or this code that we're adding below here will not execute in this block. So let's go ahead and create a variable called mon, and that's just going to be our monitor. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to want to create an instance of that class, and then we're going to do something like then we're going to run it. So we'll just say mon.run, and so now we need to go ahead here and create our run function. So we're going to say def run, and now when we run this function, we want to pass self as well here since we're in the class. Now when we run this function, we need to log our keystrokes and we need to take screenshots. So let's go ahead and set that up. We're going to do this in a special way too. We're going to use a library called threading. And what this is going to allow us to do is run these two processes in parallel. So we want to be able to take screenshots while we're logging keystrokes. We don't want there to be any kind of interference between these two processes. At this point, it would be unlikely, but it's always a good practice, we'll say, to run things in parallel to get more efficiency out of your computer. So let's go ahead here and say we're going to create two threads. Our first thread is going to be that screenshot. So let's go ahead here and let's give ourselves a parameter called interval. And for now, it's just going to equal 1. And this interval is going to be the amount of time that it occurs in between screenshots. So let's go ahead and document this a little bit for ourselves. We'll say interval is the amount of time in seconds that occurs between screenshots. Okay, and now let's just talk about what this function is also going to do. And we'll say this function is going to launch the keylogger and screenshot taker in two separate threads. Okay, cool. So now we've got that. We got a little bit of an idea of where we're going here. So let's go ahead here and we'll say now, let's go ahead and create that first thread that's going to launch our keylogger, and we'll knock that off first here. So we're going to say threading, threading.thread, and we're going to give it a target, which is going to be a function we're going to call keylogger. So let's go ahead and create that. We're going to say def, and I'm going to put an underscore before this function name when I declare it, because what this is signifying is that this is going to be a private function. It's not going to be called from outside of the class itself. So this is specific to Python and other languages. You have to explicitly state whether it's private or that option is there in other languages. In Python, you can't actually have literal private functions. They're all technically accessible, so we use an underscore just to signify that. So we're going to say def keylogger, and this is just going to have self as a parameter. And now we're going to go ahead here and we can get rid of that pass statement, and we can go ahead and now in this keylogger we can go ahead here and we can start up our keylogger. So let's go ahead now and say when this function is called, we want to do this. So we're going to say with listener, and we're going to pass on press. It takes one parameter on press, so we're going to add that. We're going to say def underscore on press self, and now this function is going to be called every time that a key is pressed. So I'm kind of working back here, guys. I'm trying to decompose starting at the top of our program. We're going to work down, figuring out what we need to do as we move down. So we're going to say here, so right now we've got our monitor instance. It's going to run. When it runs, it's going to launch a thread that targets the keylogger, and this keylogger needs to have an onPress function, or this listener, when this function is called or this class is instantiated, it needs to have an onPress parameter passed to it, which is what the code that is going to execute every time that a click or a button is pressed on the keyboard. So we're going to say onPress is going to be self.onPress. Okay, and then so we're going to say with listener onPress equals self.onPress, and we're going to define that function in just a second as listener. Then we're going to say listener.join, which is syntax for this PyInput, or is a function from this PyInput library that we are using here to actually join all of the individual strokes or keystrokes presses and put them into our logs. So let's go ahead here and now with our onPress. So when a key is pressed, this is actually going to have a K as well. So it's going to be passed K, which will be the key press object that occurs. And that object comes from PyInput and is passed into this function here. Each time that a press occurs, it's essentially using this as a callback. So let's go ahead here and now what do we want to do when we have a press here? So we actually want to log this. We want to log the key press. So we're going to say here, we're going to have one file. We're going to say with open, and we're going to create a few functions to fix up directories and things for us to keep proper structure for our logs. So we're going to say with open logs \, keylogs backslash log.txt. And we're going to want to write to that, or no, append to it as f. If we write to it, typically when you write to a file, you pass w as that second parameter. Because we want to actually add on to each key press as it continues, we just want to, or add on to the overall file instead of overwrite it, we're going to use a instead there. So we're going to say with open log.txt, which is going to be found in the logs keylogs directory, which we need to create, as f, then we're going to go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead now and say f.write, and we want to go ahead and f.write that key. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now let's see what else we need here. So we are opening up that file, we're writing to that key. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Okay, so we want to go ahead and put timestamps. So let's go ahead and do this. Okay, and then we're going to put time.time, which is a function from the time library that is going to go ahead and give us the current timestamp. So now we're writing to our file that key press, and we're also writing the timestamp. I put this \t. This is just to give us a little space. I'm actually going to put 2 here and 1 and a new line there. That'll give us some space between the key press that was written and the timestamp it occurred at. So we've got that. So that looks pretty good. So now every time that a press occurs, it opens up our log file, and it goes ahead and it writes the key that was pressed as well as a timestamp. And this is all going to be happening in that specific thread. So now we can target this self.keylogger function. And we're just going to go ahead and start that up thread right away. So that's what we're going to add there. So threading.thread, targeting this keylogger function, so it's launching it to run in parallel with our rest of our program. It's going to go ahead and it's going to start up that thread. When that thread is listening for key presses, at every key press, it's going to go ahead and call this callback function, which basically says every time we have a key press, take that key press as a parameter and execute this function, and then we're going to open our log and write to it. So let's see what else we need here. So we've got our keylogger. We're going to go ahead and test these things in just a second. There'll probably be a few bugs we need to pull out, but we're almost there. So let's go ahead here and put a good function here for screenshotting. So we're going to go ahead here and say we're going to define a function called screenshot. It's going to receive self as a parameter because we're in a class. And now this is where we're going to use MSS. So we're going to say SCT equals MSS. This is just standard to creating an instance of this here so we can then take screenshots. And then we're going to go ahead here and we're going to call SCT let's see here. We got SCT.shot, and we've got the output is going to be in our logs folder. So we're going to go ahead and put logs, and we're going to create another folder in logs that we're going to call screenshots. We're going to put it in there, and then after that, let's go ahead and just put it, let's just save it as the time. So let's just say time.time, like that. So that should go ahead and just put the literal timestamp.png. We want that extension as well. .png. Okay, so that will go ahead and put the literal timestamp with the PNG extension as the name of the screenshot that's going to be in our logs folder. So let's go ahead now and go ahead and create a function that will check to see if a logs folder has already been created, as if this program had been run already on this computer. And if it hasn't, then we're going to go ahead and create one. So we're going to say def check logs. Check for logs. What do we want to say? Def build logs. And we're going to say self, and we're going to say, so we want to check to see if that folder exists in our current directory. So we're going to say, if not, os.path.exists logs. So if the logs folder does not exist, then we want to go ahead here, and we want to go ahead and make that folder and then make the 2 folders inside that one. So we're going to say os.mkdir, and we're going to create that logs folder. Then we're going to go ahead and say os.mkdir and create that screenshots folder inside the logs folder. And we're also going to do that same exact thing here, and this is going to be for the keylog folder. So we're going to say keylogs. Let's just make sure we've got logs \keylogs, right? And we got logs \screenshots. Okay, so that looks good. So this will go ahead and build those logs for us. We want to call that right at the beginning before any of the actual screenshot or keylogging threads are launched. So let's just go ahead and say self.build logs. Okay, so now we've got that. Let's see here. So we've got our thread that is going to start our keylogger. We've got we're building our logs. Okay, now something that we want to do is we want to have our screenshot work on an interval. So if we were in JavaScript, this would be nice and easy with the setInterval function, but because we aren't in JavaScript, we're going to go ahead and implement that setInterval function using Python, and then we're going to go ahead and use that. So almost just essentially execute a function every few seconds. I'll show you guys how exactly we're going to do that with the threading library. So we want to change this import threading. I want this to be from threading. I want to import timer, and I want to import timer and thread. Okay. So now we can just get rid of this threading here, because we don't need that reference anymore. And we can go ahead here, search for any more. That looks like it. And we've got timer. So now what we want to do, guys, is we actually want to add some functionality to a library that we're importing into our program. So we want to add some functionality to the timer specifically. So we're going to say, we're going to create a new class. We're going to inherit some of the properties of a class that we took out of the threading library, and then we're going to override some of their properties so we can get some new functionality out of it. So we're going to say class, what should we call this? We'll call this interval timer, and we want to inherit timer. Okay, so now what we can do here is we can go ahead and we can change up this run function, and what we're going to do is set it to say while not self.finished wait self.interval. So what this is going to do here is say basically while the timer hasn't finished, we want to wait for that interval and then continue what we were doing. So then that would be in the case of a thread, we're receiving a function, so we want to go ahead and execute that function while finished has not been set as a flag. So in our case, normally with threads, once you start a thread, you won't be able to actually cancel that thread. What you need to do is just wait for it to run out. So if you have a thread that's looping, we need some way to change this interaction with our program between the thread and the program here. So what we need to do is just to say while the thread is while it's running, we want to set this up here. We want to go ahead and we want to set this interval. So let's go ahead here and say self.function. And then this right here is just self.args and then self.kwargs. Okay, and so what this is doing, guys, is this is basically saying we're now going to be able to create a timer similar to how we created a thread, where we're creating a threaded timer, so a parallel timer that's running with our program. So our program's running, we have a parallel timer running, and every few seconds it performs this action. So we're overriding some of the functionality in the library that we got here to go ahead and make it use an interval for this thread. So now we're going to go ahead and use this interval timer. So we're going to say interval timer target equals, we want to go ahead and target that self.screenshot, and then we want to go ahead and just start this right up. So everything else that we have in common here with the thread, every property, every function, every variable that or data that is within that thread class here is essentially the exact same as it is within the interval timer. The only difference is that we're basically adding on this little bit here that's going to go ahead and wait this interval while the thread hasn't finished, giving it that finished property. So normally threads don't necessarily have, well, they have a is running check you can do, but they don't have a specific finished check. So let's go ahead and we'll put it like that. All right, cool. So let's see where we're at here. So we've got our run. We should launch the keylogger and take those in two separate threads. We go ahead and build our folder for our logs. We go ahead and we create a thread for our keylogger. We start that up. We have an interval timer that is going to be similar to our thread, but with an interval, and that is going to take screenshots at this interval that we set here. Oh, we got to put that interval here. So let's see. Well, not self.interval. Okay. So we want to go ahead now and we want to pass in this this here. So let's go ahead and fix this up. So we actually don't need this. I was thinking that we were going to be using that same exact thread. We're actually using the timer. So we want to go ahead and put this first value is going to be the delay. So this is where we put the interval, and then we have the self.screenshot.start, and let's see here. All right. So let's see what we got. Okay, so line 20, invalid syntax. Let's see what we got here. So it looks like we are missing a parentheses there. Try again. Name OS is not defined. Got to import that. Alright, and this right here is just running it from Vim here. So let's see, name OS is not defined. Oh, and write it. Try again. Okay. So it looks like this might be working here, guys. Let's check out what we got. So we have our logs folder that was created. Let's see if this worked out. Key logs, key enter. Yep. Okay, cool. So it's getting our key logs. That looks good. And let's check out our screenshots. And cool. Okay. So I think that's it, guys. We've got our keylogs, we've got our desktop screenshots, we have everything running in parallel to make maximum use of our computer. Now, again, guys, this has some funky functionality, so don't use it for anything bad, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Good introduction to Python. You got to see how we can override some properties of existing classes and libraries that we're going to be using. And yeah, so again, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Any comments or questions, let me know below. I love to hear from you guys, and it'd be great if you could subscribe. It means a lot to me, guys. So thanks a lot, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.